What is up, everybody, and welcome to this video. Today we're going to be talking about how I set up for a black and gray tattoo. Now, when you're doing color, it can be very straightforward. Obviously, you just fill your ink cups with the exact color that you're going to use. With black and gray, it's a little bit different. Depending on how many drops of black you put in your ink cap will change the actual tones that you put into the skin. Some will be darker, some will be lighter. So I'm going to break down and show you exactly how I set up for this and the different ways that I do it for the different styles. As always, make sure you like and subscribe down below and hit that little bell notification so you can be updated on all the new videos we come out with each week. And if you're new to the channel, I am Brandon from Tattooing 101 and welcome to this video. Okay, so before we get into setting everything up and showing you exactly how I do things, there's a couple things that you want to remember. When it comes to tattooing on fake skins, the ink that you put in the fake skin is always going to be darker than it would be on actual human skin, which I'm going to show you and explain when I'm setting everything up. Another thing I'm going to be setting up on my desk. You only do this and you only set up on a desk if you are tattooing fake skins only. If you're tattooing on actual people, you need a safe environment and understand completely all the risks of bloodborne pathogens, how to sterilize your equipment, and all the things going into that, which I will be making a video on very, very soon. Awesome, so now that we went over all of that, let's get into showing you how to do it. All right, first of all, we're going to make sure that we glove up. All right, ready? Let's see if I can do it with some magic. Wow, it worked. Okay, next, you're going to be wrapping your table. So one trick I have whenever you are tattooing on a table with fake skins only would be make sure you're putting water down on the actual table before putting your cellophane. It'll help stick better and it won't be sliding around everywhere when you're doing it. So you're going to spray some water. Now that there's water down on the table, you could lay down your cellophane. And you could see, normally it would be sliding around and you'd be able to move it around, but it's actually sticking to the table, which helps out a ton. And you just ripped it off. So this is going to be your work area right here. Now we can get on to what we need next, which will be ink caps. Now, depending on what you're doing will differentiate how many ink caps that you need. Sometimes I will use 4. Sometimes I will use 3. And sometimes I'll use a ton more. But that's for realism and things like that, which we'll get into in the future. So for right now, I'm going to show you these 2 setups. Next on the list is going to be your Vaseline. This is what you're going to use to keep the ink caps from moving around everywhere on your workstation. You want them to stay still and not fall over and spill ink everywhere, which could be terribly annoying. It's happened, maybe once or twice in my career, and it just really leaves for a bad day. So all you gotta do is get your Vaseline, move these out of the way, and then just make yourself a straight line, enough for it to actually stick to the cellophane. And this is also the way that I set up my actual station. I'm just showing you on a table for this video. And you just stick them in right like that, and you could see that they are on there, they're not moving around, you're not going to tip them over, things like that, which helps out a ton. Then obviously this Vaseline will be the actual tattooing process. Now we get into the next most important part, would be the ink that you're using. Now I use Dynamic a lot. I also use this solid ink lining black. Depending on what you have, you can use anything for this process as long as it is in a reputable brand. You don't want to be using something that you got off Amazon. Make sure that you're buying actual companies. Even Amazon sells fake ink on there that could lead to a lot of problems with healing or not being appropriate for going into the skin. A lot of things, but if you are working on fake skins, obviously that's fine. My question for you guys today would be, what's your favorite gray wash ink set out there? I might do a review on it in the future, so all you got to do is comment down below your favorites and I'll check them out. Now we could get into the drop method that I use for every tattoo. So this top one is going to be for my black and gray, things like that. Also, one thing you want to think about is if you're working on fake skins, like this, the black and gray is going to go into the fake skins a lot darker. So I will always leave my darkest one out because it'll end up exactly like black. So that's one thing to think about if you're working on fake skins. I would just cut this one out and go into my medium and light. But working on actual people, obviously you would have this tone because it is completely different, and you could do the darker tone and it'll be different than black. Awesome. So my first one, I always go from right to the left. I've done this my whole career, and it helps me know exactly where everything needs to be at all times. If you set up your station differently, it's going to cause problems trying to figure out which one's your darkest to your medium to your light. So I just recommend that you set up all the same every single time. Now, I don't know if it's different if you're left-handed or right-handed. I'm right-handed, so I start out with my black to the right, but that could be, personal preference. So now we're going to start. This is my solid black, like I just got done explaining. So we're going to fill that one up. I know that my right's always going to be my 100% solid black. Then we go one step over, which I'm going to be doing 8 drops. That's going to be my darkest gray wash. And sometimes I'll dip in between my darkest one and my black if I'm trying to get a little bit darker of a tone. But that's another technique completely that I'm sure I'll go over in a different video. So it goes solid black, 8 drops, 6 drops, then 3 drops. I also always set up with an ink cap right here of solid water. So there'd actually be 5 right here. That's for my super light tones if I want to dip in my lightest one and go into my water just to get a super light transition between my gray washes. I'll just put one on there just so you could see. There we go, that'll be my water. So down here, this is going to be for my traditional style tattoos that I do. So, obviously traditional style tattoos, you want, like solid, bold lines, crisp shading. You want to be able to see the little pepper shading that your needles make when it goes into the skin. So I don't go with like the lightest gray wash. I only use that for black and gray, things like that. I'll also use this setup for color because I don't need a ton of transitions with my black because I'm doing a color tattoo. So I start out with my black, as always, on the far right. And another thing, whenever you're doing this, you want to make sure you're shaking up your ink bottle every single time. I didn't put that on video because obviously it's super loud and annoying, so I just didn't film that part. But make sure you're shaking up your ink bottles. All right, our solid black right there. Then we're going to go into my 8 drops, then my 3 drops. And obviously, I'll be using these two the most when it comes to a actual traditional style tattoo. Awesome, so now comes the distilled water, and you always want to make sure that you're wrapping up your bottle as well. And then you skip the solid black because obviously that doesn't need to have added water to it because that's our 100%. So now we just go down the line filling it up with our water. I like to do it in an actual bottle just because it saves it from spilling everywhere if you're trying to like fill up with a bottle. Some people back in the day used to use a paper towel to dip in their distilled water and then transfer it over to the actual ink, but I just prefer using a bottle. And then do the same down here, skipping the first one, going straight into our gray wash setup, right like that. Okay, now that our gray wash is set up, there's a couple more things I want to point out. So I do this exactly the same every single time. I use the same ink every single time, so I know what this tone is going to look like. I know what this tone, all the tones, I know exactly what they're going to look like in the skin every time I tattoo. This is super important because you don't want to be second guessing yourself or trying out new brands of ink all the time, because then you never really know how your tattoo is going to heal up. That's why people buy pre-made gray washes out there so they could have the exact same setup each time and know exactly what the tones are going to be in the skin. But if you do it with this method and know exactly what you're putting into your ink caps every single time, and also using the same size ink caps every single time. If you use a smaller one and try this method, obviously it's going to be darker. So use the same size ink caps every single time. This will be exactly like some of those pre-made gray washes out there on the market. Another thing I would like to point out would be sometimes I add white ink into my gray washes to give a different style to the actual gray wash. It has a little bit of a gray tone to it. The colors stay more true whenever it's going through the healing process. It doesn't light up as much because there's actual tones in this gray wash instead of just diluted with water. So I'll show you how I do that as well. As always, you want to make sure you're shaking up your ink bottle. So from here, I always start from the right. So I know that this is my darkest gray wash. I go in here and do 3 drops of white all the way down. And like I said, what this does is just give a different tone to your actual tattoo when you're doing it, and it makes you stand apart when it comes to like the other tattoo community, because your gray wash is going to look different, and your black and gray tattoos are going to stand out. Awesome, so I hope this video is able to help you guys out know exactly what gray wash you're going to put in your ink caps every single time to create a really well-made tattoo. And as always, make sure you are liking and subscribing down below so you can keep up to date on all our new videos we shoot every single week. As always, thank you guys so much, and you have a wonderful day.